Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving right into a fascinating framework by Calvin W. Nathan called Detach to Attract. It's essentially a stoic reality check on why we sometimes lose ourselves in relationships and how reclaiming your emotional independence is actually the secret to building lasting attraction. Because let's be honest, we've all been at that crossroads, right? You get so utterly wrapped up in someone else that your own identity just shrinks. You start bending over backwards, decoding every little silence, and in the process of trying to hold on so tight, you literally lose your sense of self. Have you ever felt like you lost your own value by loving someone just a little too much? You know that painful realization where you're suddenly aware that you're doing all the giving, all the chasing, and yet, the more you cling to them, the further they seem to pull away. It's an awful feeling. We kind of have this assumption that if we just care more, if we're always available and always sweet, they won't leave. But according to Nathan's take on human psychology, it just doesn't work that way. Actually, scratch that. Desperation actively lowers your perceived value. Section 1. Love or fear of losing. To really get why this push and pull happens, we need to dismantle a major misconception right off the bat. We have to ask ourselves, are our actions driven by real, genuine love, or are they just a disguised fear of losing the other person? A healthy relationship is rooted in actual love, meaning it's balanced, secure, and reciprocal. But contrast that with what happens when the fear of losing someone takes the wheel. It leads straight to overgiving. When you're frantically waiting for a text, constantly making excuses for why they're absent, or taking the blame for every quiet moment, well, you're not building a healthy connection. The text suggests that this instinct to relentlessly please someone is actually driven by deep-seated insecurity, not genuine affection. It's like you're trying to buy their presence with constant effort. Which brings us to this hard-hitting realization from Nathan. Overgiving is fear, not love. Wow. Think about that for a second. When you constantly make yourself available and ignore your own needs just to cater to theirs, you're acting out of pure fear. And the framework argues that this doesn't create a bond at all. It creates dependency. And dependency, that is the absolute enemy of a thriving, healthy relationship. You see, relationships run on a delicate energy balance. When one person is constantly pouring in 80% of the energy and the other is only tossing in 20, that relationship isn't truly surviving. It's just hanging by a thread. The person doing all the heavy lifting gets completely exhausted, and the person receiving it, they just start taking it for granted. Eventually, under the weight of those totally skewed expectations, the connection just inevitably snaps. So what's the fix? That brings us to section 2. What is detachment really? And we need to clear up a massive myth here. Detachment definitely does not mean being cold, cruel, or apathetic. The text defines it as achieving emotional independence and choosing yourself first without acting like an unfeeling stone. It simply means reclaiming your mental peace. It's making a conscious decision that your personal happiness meter isn't going to be entirely controlled by someone else's hands anymore. It's all about protecting your inner stability, no matter what the other person decides to do. Detachment captures this perfectly here. Detachment is not the absence of feelings, it is the absence of dependency. I love that phrasing. It means you can absolutely still love someone and care deeply for them, but your entire existence, your whole sense of self-worth, doesn't hang by a thread on their validation. You are complete on your own, which means you connect out of choice, not out of desperate necessity. The philosophy suggests we essentially carry two versions of ourselves into our relationships. On one hand, you have the lost self. This version is anxious, always seeking assurance, and frankly terrified of abandonment. On the other hand, you have the grounded self. This version is confident, emotionally balanced, and most importantly, capable of setting boundaries. The whole journey of Detach to Attract is about consciously moving away from that anxious, attention-seeking version and actively empowering your grounded self. Section 3. Psychology of Attraction. Distance. Once you start operating from that grounded place, something super fascinating happens. Let's explore a core rule of human psychology, how we respond to scarcity. The framework maps out this specific chain reaction of chasing that explains exactly why desperation backfires. Step 1. Overavailability. You're always there, right? Always ready? Well, that naturally rolls into step 2. It triggers neediness. You start wanting them to notice all your effort. Step 3. This completely wipes out any sense of scarcity. And finally, step 4, your perceived value drops. It's just human nature. We are hardwired to value things that are slightly out of reach, things we fear losing. When you're constantly chasing, you remove all fear of loss and become entirely predictable. Which leads to this harsh but profound truth from the text. You lose people by giving them too much of yourself too quickly. It sounds backwards, right? But giving absolutely everything right away diminishes your worth in their eyes because it signals a total lack of internal boundaries. Let's be real. Nobody values you more simply because you instantly sacrificed your entire identity for the relationship. So, how do we stop this cycle of predictability? Section 4, Silence and Boundaries. These are your practical tools for detachment. The framework really emphasizes the immense power of boundaries. It argues that while love requires effort, your dignity requires boundaries. Constantly saying yes to everything, rushing to patch up every tiny misunderstanding, it just kills attraction. Boundaries actually protect your self-respect and keep you from emotional burnout. More than that, they create a healthy level of mystery and challenge. They demand respect. By putting boundaries in place, you naturally filter out the people who just want to drain your energy, leaving room only for those who genuinely value your presence. Alongside those boundaries, the text introduces the power of silence. Silence is not absence. Silence is presence without noise. Think about it. When you instantly react to every little thing, people start taking your emotions for granted. But if you step back, if you pause and offer silence instead of a frantic reaction, that's when the other person finally feels the true weight of your value. Silence is incredibly powerful because it acts like a mirror. The author points out that constantly over-explaining or justifying your actions is the absolute fastest killer of self-respect. It weakens your stance. Mature silence, though, it forces the other person to look right into that mirror. It makes them reflect on their own behavior without you having to say a single word. Let's bring this whole thing together in Section 5, The Real Secret of Attraction. After unpacking the dangers of overgiving and the power of boundaries, the philosophy reveals what actually builds magnetic, lasting attraction. It all comes down to the energy you project. Neediness is the ultimate turnoff. It screams lack of self-control and an over-reliance on external validation. Confidence, on the flip side, is the ultimate attractor because it's rooted entirely in your own self-worth. True attraction is never, ever built on frantic, desperate effort. It's built on a calm, stable, and confident presence. The absolute crucial takeaway is summed up perfectly by the author. Real confidence means I want you, but I don't need you. That is the highest level of respect and attraction. It brings genuine desire to the table while completely stripping away that desperate neediness. It sends the message that your world isn't going to collapse if they walk away. And honestly, that kind of emotional independence is incredibly alluring. When you start practicing this kind of detachment, the results are literally transformative. You become emotionally centered. You stop obsessing over getting validation from someone else. Stepping back gives you perfect clarity to see if a connection is actually bringing you peace or if it's just causing you pain. And because you stop the frantic chasing, your energy naturally becomes magnetic. People just automatically start respecting your presence so much more. Which leaves us with this incredibly vital, empowering takeaway. You don't have to lose yourself to get those who are meant for you. A genuinely healthy connection thrives on two whole, complete individuals. It never, ever thrives on one person sacrificing their identity just to keep the other one around. I want to wrap up our explainer today by challenging you with this final, provocative question from the framework. Should you fear losing someone who doesn't fear losing you? Let that sit with you for a bit. Rethink the dynamics of your relationships and always remember the true price of your own dignity. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next one.